For 5 years had passed since my wife of 15 years, Adelia Lynn Masters, once a local Bank America branch manager, asked for a divorce, citing she no longer loved me. She insisted there was no one else and claimed we had simply grown apart. I had my doubts, but could never prove anything. Shortly after, I overheard her on the phone discussing big changes in her life. We agreed to joint custody of our daughters, then 14 and 12. Both chose to live with her after private interviews. Today, reading the newspaper, I saw an article about Adelia Lynn Peterson, now a regional junior vice president, attending a New York charity event with her husband, Ronald Peterson, a senior vice president. Their daughters, Amanda and Miranda Peterson, now 19 and 17, were also featured. It was definitely Adelia, I thought. She now had the status and prestige she always wanted. The article mentioned her popularity in social circles. Her husband used to be a casual friend of mine from when Adelia and he worked together at Bank of America. Though Amanda and Miranda were my daughters, they now bore a different last name. My immediate reaction was to call my assistant, Helen Beard, to verify what I saw. Helen, who happened to be a distant cousin of Adelia's, was off for personal reasons that day. On the day our divorce was to be finalized, Adelia didn't show up. Concerned, I asked my lawyer to find out why. The judge required both of us to testify about the terms agreed upon. Her lawyer revealed she had moved out of state without my consent. No, I replied, when asked if I had permitted the relocation of our children. That's when my nightmare truly began. Judge Donald McDonald's demeanor shifted instantly. Upon learning the situation, he asked, "Can you step outside and try calling them on your cell?" I left the courtroom and attempted to reach them. To my dismay, all three numbers were disconnected. Checking their Facebook profiles on my phone, I discovered I had been unfriended and blocked. Returning to court, I informed my lawyer of everything I'd uncovered. He relayed the information to the judge. The judge promptly issued an arrest warrant for my wife, charging her with parental kidnapping. He suspended the divorce proceedings until she appeared in person before him. Her lawyer, outraged, tried to appeal to the judge's sense of fairness. "It's not that big of a deal," her lawyer implied. "Mr. Masters can confirm their agreement." "He did," the judge affirmed. "He just testified that he didn't agree to the children leaving the state." Her lawyer countered, "That may not be true. He could be lying." "Which is why she needs to be here," the judge emphasized, "with both their daughters." Later, during the police investigation, I learned her family claimed she had requested a transfer due to allegations of long-term physical misuse against my daughters. Even colleagues at Bank of America seemed ready to support these claims, though no evidence was presented. They simply took Adelia's word because of her reputation. "Why should it matter? He's just a man," they reasoned. When our extended family and social services privately interviewed the girls, they confirmed no such allegations had ever been raised. Despite this, rumors spread throughout town, fueled by Adelia's relatives. Over the past 5 years, the judge and I had bonded over our shared love for fly fishing, maintaining a friendship. That evening, after dinner, I dropped by to see him and his wife, unsurprised by my visit. "I brought the paper for a reason. There's something you need to see," I said seriously, as I opened the paper to the article for him. "Son of a witch," the judge muttered. "Ruth, can you pass me my phone? John, could you give me a moment?" "Donald, the photo below is of my 2 daughters." The judge's face paled. Jesus Christ, they've been right in front of us all this time. I went outside and sat on their patio. Ruth joined me, bringing us both a beer. "He's furious. I've never seen him this angry. He's on the phone with the FBI." "What did you show him?" Ruth asked. "A picture in today's paper of my missing wife and her new husband. It's the first sign in 5 years that she's alive," I replied. The second photo on the page was my daughters with different last names. "Oh no, what a mess. That's why he called the FBI. Interstate flight with a kidnapping charge is federal," Ruth said. "Why didn't Bank of America help locate her?" "They cited a legal ruling from a federal appeals court, arguing it was a family matter and they weren't obligated to comply with your husband's court order." "I've headed home. Emotions are overwhelming me. Tell him he can reach me at my office in the morning," I told the judge. It was a long, rough night for me. Was there more to their relationship than friendship back then? She was hired as a financial loans officer in his department after we married, while I was starting my consulting firm. With my daughters now using different last names, I wondered, were they his or mine? Did either of us know the truth? I reminded myself, slow down, Amanda was already born when Adelia joined the bank. The next morning, I worried about Helen. Over the past 5 years, her disdain for her cousin had deepened. I knew she believed me. Her actions proved that. Many times I wanted to confide in her, but I held back. She deserved better than what I could offer amidst my own troubles. Helen, to me, was a beautiful woman with auburn hair, a gentle smile, and a kind heart, a treasure any good man would cherish. I admired her from afar, never daring to involve her in my nightmare. Work kept me occupied that busy day, thankfully diverting my thoughts. Near day's end, my assistant knocked and entered. "John, 2 gentlemen from the FBI are here to see you." "Should I let them in?" Helen asked. "Absolutely. I've been expecting them," I replied, rising. "How can I assist you?" I asked as they entered. "I'm Mac Holmes, and this is Douglas Drysdale," Mac introduced. "We're here to gather background on the situation." I explained our history with her current husband and raised concerns about their relationship and my daughter's name changes. I suggested DNA tests for clarity. I mentioned Judge Donald McDonald halting the divorce due to parental kidnapping charges when she failed to appear. "You'll need to determine if she filed for divorce in New York and if her marriage is legal," I advised. "So the divorce was never finalized by the judge?" Douglas clarified. "That's correct. The records show she disobeyed his order to appear," I confirmed. "Did you authorize her to leave the state with your children?" Mac inquired. "No. Her lawyer informed us she moved out of state," I said, recalling the judge's instructions to contact them. "When I tried, their numbers were disconnected, and I was blocked on social media," I added. "She moved out of state before finalizing the divorce and remarried shortly after," Doug noted. "It's clear it was intentional," Mac concluded. "That contradicts what she stated in her New York interview today." "When did you last contact her?" Douglas asked. 2 weekends before our final court hearing when they removed their belongings," I recounted. "I haven't received any legal notices or local updates since. It seems I'm still legally married," I remarked. "We can charge them for falsifying adoption papers," Max suggested. I asked about adoption papers but got no answer, I noted. "Helen, draft a letter confirming my signature for the FBI." "Do you still reside at 87654 Yale?" Mac inquired. "No, I sold it under court order after a series of incidents," I explained. "Now I live outside town at Ryder Lake, ensuring my safety." After they left, I briefed Helen. She was shocked to hear about her distant cousin and showed hope and curiosity. But there were still too many unknowns, leaving me without answers. "Helen, tonight when I leave, I'll turn off my cell phone. If my situation troubles you, use your judgment. In an emergency, call my house phone," I said. Helen harbored deep animosity toward her cousin Adelia for ruining John's reputation in relationships, causing him to lose family and friends. Witnessing this damage firsthand left Helen questioning how much one could endure before truth prevailed. She had watched John suffer silently for years, sinking himself into work to triple his client base. She had met John at 14, him at 19, at a family party where Adelia's engagement overshadowed everything. Helen predicted their relationship's downfall. John prioritized family, while Adelia craved attention and prestige. Helen had confided in John after her husband's pass away, finding solace in his support. Over time, she realized he was the one she wanted to grow old with, but John's haunted past consumed him daily. Adelia and her children's disappearance sparked vicious rumors, some even accusing John of felony. During dinner at Ruby Tuesdays, Adelia's father Roger approached him unexpectedly, sharing that Adelia admitted John never injured their daughters and used false claims to justify her departure. John demanded signed statements from relatives to believe their sincerity, dismissing Roger coldly. "Many in this town think I'm guilty of something I never did," John asserted. Roger left, and John pondered whether anyone believed a 2-minute chat could erase 5 years of pain and lies. Moments later, the waitress who served him approached. "Mr. Masters, I went to school with your daughters. From what I just heard, they had no idea what was going on that Friday before they disappeared. I saw the man who just left working with others from your wife's family as they packed up," the waitress said. "I thought you should know." "Thank you for being honest. I wasn't aware of that," I replied. "I've grown used to being lied to all these years, keeping mostly to myself to avoid the whispers and lies spread about me." She returned to work. When I paid, I generously tipped her. Fishing on the lake that weekend brought me solace. My favorite meal, fresh rainbow trout, was enjoyed each night. Back at work Monday, I made coffee when Helen arrived early, unusually upbeat. After pouring herself a cup, she joined me. Looking back, Adelia and I married right after her high school graduation. Amanda was born soon after. I was flipping houses while she worked her way up in banking, I explained. I heard what you told Roger. Everyone did. My phone rang all weekend. I told them, can you blame him after what the family did? Why notarize statements? She asked. For defamation, I said. To reclaim my reputation. Are you suing her? Helen asked. Yes, to clear my name and restrict their funds, I said. It'll be an interesting week if all those calls turn into statements. Most are good people, but they believe the lies, Helen said. Let's see if guilt moves them. She smiled. Some of us single girls enjoy early morning fishing. I laughed. Leaving work, I thanked Helen for brightening my day. She'd been my rock through these years. By Thursday lunch, 24 notarized statements proved Adelia lied about me abusing our daughters to justify leaving town. She manipulated family into helping and had no remorse. Helen found Adelia's legal address and work details. Your lawyer appointment's at 2. Serve Adelia before charging her and freeze their assets, she said. Helen, you're leaving nothing to chance, I thought. God help Adelia if you ever meet her in person. I returned to the office at 4:30 with chilled champagne and glasses. Helen's chosen lawyer was taking my case, and I handed over all evidence. Old court records, recordings, the judge's ruling, signed affidavits, and a warrant for Adelia's arrest. I also included a news article about her new life and detailed our relationships. Learning the Bank of America was compliant, the lawyer said, we should sue them too for aiding in destroying your life. As long as one lawsuit covers both, count me in, I replied. We Americans will sue over anything, she smiled. Helen and I shared the champagne, but our moment was interrupted by a call from the judge. Hi, Donald. How's it going? I answered. The FBI is proceeding with a grand jury against Adelia and Ronald next Wednesday, he said. They'll request custody of Miranda and DNA tests for all. Thanks, Donald. About my divorce, I started. I'll grant it once she's in court, even via video, Donald assured. Helen asked, can he send her to jail? The FBI will handle kidnapping charges, but he can rule on contempt, I explained. It's a waiting game, Helen sighed. Yeah, 5 years and counting, I nodded. A few more weeks won't change much. The following week passed quickly. Thursday morning, my lawyer confirmed papers were served, assets frozen. That afternoon, FBI agent Doug called for a DNA test. Fishing Saturday morning, Helen called about Adelia's FBI detention. Curious, I headed to the office to read Us Today. The FBI had detained them for kidnapping, defined under federal law as using force or deception to hold someone against their will for personal gain. Adelia faced multiple charges for taking her children without consent, including forgery to hide them with Ronald Peterson, her new husband from New York. They had manipulated adoption papers while working together at Bank of America. Mr. John Masters attempted to locate his wife through Bank of America, but faced a court order preventing disclosure. Ronald Peterson, a senior vice president at the bank, used his authority to hinder John's efforts. John filed a slander suit against Adelia Peterson for falsely accusing him of misuse, causing ongoing police reports. Despite society's perceptions, he became isolated. We have 2 open attempted felony cases, said a police officer. Many here believed he had liquidated them and got away with it. The article laid out the facts. The Southeast Missouri newspaper called, confirming its accuracy. The reporter empathized, calling the last 5 years a living hell. My name's partly cleared, John said, planning to sell his business and leave. He collected evidence for his case. Meanwhile, Amanda Peterson was shocked by her parents' arrest for kidnapping. Learning her real parents were not divorced, she was stunned. Her mother was charged with parental kidnapping, her stepfather with aiding and abetting. Amanda left for Cape, reading a damning article about her parents. As she reflected on her mother's actions, Amanda pondered the unanswered questions. Parked outside her old home, police approached, escalating the already tense situation. Who are you? Why are you watching this place? Asked the taller officer. I'm Amanda Peterson. I was waiting for the sheriff's department to leave so I could talk to my father, Amanda replied. And your father's name? The officer inquired. John Masters, she answered. Oh, wow, the officer exclaimed in shock. Tom, go tell Joanne and Jody to put the coffee on. This changes things. Miss Peterson, I'm Detective Joel Smithers. I know your father well. What brought you back here after all this time? He asked. Partly what happened last night and the Us Today article. I have a copy in the car. Should I get it? Amanda asked. Please do. It will help me understand what you know, Joel said. After introductions and coffee, Detective Smithers read the article aloud. Everyone seemed stunned except him. You believed my father, didn't you, Detective? Amanda said. I was one of the few, but yes. From the time rumors spread by your mother's family, it was too late. He was stalked, his house vandalized, and he was attacked. We almost lost him. Many thought he was responsible for your disappearance. Your father has been ostracized, Joel explained. A lot of us in the South have our own ideas about justice. Your dad's situation got so bad that it drove him out, Amanda remarked. Where does he live now? He's on 5 fenced acres at Ryder Lake, with electric wire and an electronic gate. In 2 years, no one has seen him in town outside of work, Tom explained. How can I contact him? Amanda wondered aloud. I think I can help with that, Tom replied. I'll check if his business has an emergency contact. Give me a moment. Tom returned shortly with an address written down. Do you know Helen Beard? Tom asked Amanda. She's a second cousin of my mother's, I think. Why? Amanda inquired. She's the only one on record who can reach him 24/7 in emergencies. She's tough and protective of your father, John, Tom explained. She's on her way to his business right now to meet you. He handed Amanda the address. After thanking them, she set off. Helen Beard seemed to hold a deep animosity towards her father. Jody asked, what kind of woman could hate a man so much to do what Adelia did to Jonathan? Miranda and I were abruptly awakened by our mother at 4 a.m. that Saturday morning, still half asleep and dragged out of bed. She packed some of our clothes into the car and told us we were going on a surprise trip to New York for a week, Amanda recounted. That was news to us, she added. So you had no idea about what was really happening? Helen asked. Some family members now say they knew about Ronald and your mother's online relationship, but thought it was just a friendship. Well, I caught my mom chatting with Ronald, but I had no idea they had worked together when we were younger. She told me they met at a regional conference and became friends, Amanda replied. It wasn't until half an hour down the road that I realized we didn't have our phones. I confronted her and she said she had sole custody of us granted by the courts and we were moving to New York because of her sudden promotion and transfer. I believed her at the time, but now I know it was all a lie. Helen Beard understood some truth in Amanda's story based on recent revelations from others who had finally spoken up about what Adelia's children were unaware of. I also asked about our laptops. My mother said the phones were canceled due to the move, and she had to pay the balance. She claimed the movers would pack and ship our laptops along with the furniture. We didn't realize they would never arrive, Amanda continued. We drove for 20 hours over 2 days. What happened when you reached the outskirts of New York? Mom told Miranda to pull out her new phone from her purse, which had a New York number we didn't know about until then. Then she had my sister open Google Maps, giving us directions that led us to Ronald Peterson's home about 2 hours later. He had orchestrated her significant promotion to bring them closer together. Meanwhile, our family back home was instructed to get rid of everything except family photos, which were later mailed to us. While unpacking, my sister and I discovered completed adoption papers, Amanda recounted. Ronald later explained that our parents agreed to this because he and Mom were getting married. That night, Mom revealed that Ronald was our biological father and urged us to give him a chance. Gradually, we were led to believe that Dad cut ties with us upon learning of Ronald's true role in our lives. Amanda, I believe you because I've already heard about half of this from the family. Until now, the only concrete thing we knew was that the school district had given Adelia copies of your school records so you could enroll in your new school once settled. Now that Adelia's been found, the truth is emerging. Just so you know, I've recorded our conversation. After I send it to the FBI and your father, let's grab an early dinner at Ruby Tuesdays, Helen said. While I do that, take a look at these notarized statements. Consider this. If she lied to you about your father, John Masters, could she also be lying about Ronald Peterson? Helen left the room briefly to watch Amanda before forwarding their conversation. Amanda was realizing the extent to which her mother's family had conspired against her father, John. She sent the conversation first to John, then to his civil lawyer due to its damaging nature, and finally to the FBI. Throughout, she observed Amanda, who made no attempts to contact anyone. Just before returning, John texted her, "I'll be waiting for your arrival. Thank you." She texted back, "I left her alone for about half an hour so she could read some statements we received from the family. She hasn't tried to contact anyone." With that, she returned to Amanda. "Helen, why did my mother tell the family my father had been physically abusing us for years?" Amanda asked. "The family never really approved of your father. Your mother knew that. I think she used it to justify her sudden disappearance and move far away overnight. Adelia also knew your father would search for you, and he did. He even sued Bank of America to find your mother's location and initially won, but lost on appeal, Helen explained. We didn't learn about your mother's marriage or your name change until a few weeks ago, when your photo appeared in the paper. That's when your father served them. That day, your mother tried to reconnect with the family in a failed attempt to resolve her mounting problems. For over 5 years, your father has been hunted because of your mother's actions. There were moments we thought we might lose him twice. How is my dad really? Amanda asked gravely. He keeps to himself and has lost a lot of weight. The prolonged stress has turned most of his hair white. His Facebook page was flooded with hate and threats, forcing him to close his account and remove his name from the corporate page. He's learned not to trust many people anymore. He used to be outgoing. Now he's quiet and reserved. He goes out of town for personal shopping to avoid attention. Things are slowly improving for him, but even his own family has turned away. Divorce is tough, but what he faced was far worse. People here still believe he got away with the felony of you three. Does Dad have a girlfriend? Amanda inquired. With the reputation your mother gave him, would anyone date him? Helen replied. For over 5 years, he's had to defend himself against an unprovable lie. Amanda remained silent for a moment before saying, every time he tried to defend himself, it backfired because they had already made up their minds. He was left to fend for himself. Our sudden disappearance only made it worse by giving instant credibility to my mother's accusations. Adelia and Ronald planned it well. Your father paid the highest price. It got so bad that I feared he might take his own life, Helen said, tears starting to flow. Let's go eat. It was then that Amanda realized the sacrifices Helen had made. She had stood by her father throughout the past 5 years. How much had she lost in doing so? As they headed toward Helen's car, Amanda stopped. Thank you, Helen. For what? Helen asked. For having the courage to stand by and love my dad all these years, Amanda replied. The words Amanda spoke brought Helen to tears. Amanda comforted her as she wept. Meanwhile, at Ruby Tuesdays, I sat in my car, anxiously waiting for them to arrive. My emotions were in turmoil. I replayed Helen's and Amanda's conversation over and over in my mind. I believed what I had heard, yet I couldn't fully grasp it. When I saw them pull in, get out of the car, and walk toward the entrance, my hands shook so much I could barely light a cigarette. I was a bundle of nerves. Amanda had grown into a beautiful woman. I could see so much of my own mother's face in her, which saddened me because my own family had disowned me shortly after my wife and daughters disappeared. After finishing my cigarette, I turned off the car and prepared for one of the shortest yet longest walks of my life. The waitress who had served me a few weeks ago was now acting as the hostess. She immediately said, "Amanda's here." I spoke to her and seated her and her friend towards the back. "Are you here to meet them?" I confirmed, and she continued, "She'll have her back to us when we approach their booth." She led me to their table. Helen noticed me right away and smiled. I walked up and sat beside her, gripping Helen's hand for support. For the first time in over 5 years, I looked directly into my daughter's bright blue eyes. Without words, tears began to flow from both of us. Sometimes, words fail in such moments. I had asked for a large flask of their house wine from the hostess. When it arrived, the waitress said nothing, poured our first glasses, and left us alone. Amanda was struck by how much I had changed. I had lost around 40 pounds and appeared thinner and older, with my silvery white hair adding to the transformation. Many women would pay a fortune to achieve that look at my age. Amanda decided someone needed to act, so she stood up, and I followed suit. We met at the edge of the table in a big hug. She cried out, "Dad." I responded, "Amma," my old nickname for her. Together we broke the ice. After our emotions settled, we ordered food. Amanda was surprised by how differently I ate now. Previously a meat and potatoes guy, I ordered a catfish platter with unlimited salad bar. As Helen and I refilled our salad plates, Amanda took the chance to speak with me privately. "Helen loves you, Dad, probably more than I do," Amanda confessed. She grilled me like an old army sergeant until she was convinced I was being honest. She wasn't going to let me hurt you again, and I did. I was old enough to search for the truth myself, but I didn't. I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for that. Amanda, for the past 5 years, I've had no life to offer anyone. People around here suspected me of eliminating you all and getting away with it. If a body had turned up during that time, I might have ended up in jail, I explained. That's why 3 years ago, after being attacked and hospitalized twice, I changed my will to leave everything to you. Helen found me on the brink of ending it all and pulled me back. When Helen returned and saw Amanda in tears, She asked what had upset her. Not much, I replied. Just that 3 years ago, while in the hospital, I decided to change my will to leave everything to Amanda. I told her it was her love that saved me. Soon both women were crying. After lunch, we returned the rental car and headed to my private home at Ryder Lake. They admired the view and the layout of the house. I offered to carry Amanda's luggage, but she declined, wanting to give us privacy. "Why didn't you tell me sooner how you felt?" Helen asked. "I couldn't. I felt trapped by my past," I admitted. "I never knew what might happen next. Adelia and Ronald used that uncertainty against me. Now that I'm free from their accusations, I can offer you a future." Helen squeezed my hand affectionately. "I guess I'll be putting my home up for sale because I won't let you sell this place." Later, Amanda caught us kissing, which made her feel a bit guilty. We spent the next hour catching up on her life. She was working in a stagnant job in business and pursuing her master's degree online. She wasn't dating seriously. "Why don't you join us?" I offered. "We can afford it, and we could use your fresh perspective. You can start at a junior level and work your way up, considering everything we've collectively put you through." "Are you serious?" Amanda asked in disbelief. "Yes, Amanda," Helen replied, her smile wide. "We can start you off with a $45,000 annual salary." "Wow, I guess I'll need to find a place to live," Amanda said, touched. "Don't rush. There's plenty of room here," I reassured her. "But I expect you to do chores like old times," Amanda said, tears welling up. "Dad, you've always been a big part of my life," Amanda added emotionally. "I'll fly out tomorrow to pack if I can arrange a flight. Depending on how long it takes, I should be here sometime Wednesday in my car," Amanda said practically. "Let's exchange phone numbers." As we finished that, Amanda received a text from Miranda, which she showed me. "Finally got my cell back. FBI's holding me until DNA proves if Ronald Peterson's my dad. Found out the adoption papers were forged," Miranda's message read. Amanda replied, "With Dad now, flying to pack tomorrow, moving back home, joining his firm. His number saved as Sir." Miranda responded, "Bring mine and my laptop. Lawyers can handle the rest." "See if you can grab today's Us Today newspaper. It explains a lot," Amanda texted back. "Call me when you can." Helen found me on the patio and asked, "How are you feeling?" "Emotionally overwhelmed," I admitted, pulling her into a hug. "How about I take Amanda with me to get some of my clothes?" Helen suggested. "That'll give you some time to process everything." I sent her the program for the gate's electronic lock via her cell phone and gave her the house keys to copy, suggesting we might need 4. They were gone about 2 hours. I spent most of that time in tears, finally releasing the pain I'd carried for so long. When they returned, we were all smiling. I was on the patio, firing up the grill for steaks, with salad ready and potatoes baking. I watched them chat as they brought in lots of stuff over 4 trips, now spread across the master bed. During a very late dinner, Amanda mentioned she'd fly out at 8 a.m. Sunday, and Helen and I would move more of her things tomorrow. It warmed my heart to see the girls enjoy their meal. Afterward, over coffee, my phone rang. Only the FBI had this number besides us. "Hello, Mr. Masters, it's Doug Drysdale. Miranda's DNA test confirms you're her father. She wants to come home, landing in Cape at 7:30 Monday," Doug informed me. "That's great news. Helen and I will be there to meet her," I replied. "Perfect. Amanda's on her way. Miranda saw the article online," Doug added. "By the way, Ronald Peterson was devastated. Adelia misled him about Miranda. It doesn't change his legal situation." "One more thing. What are my daughter's legal names now?" I asked. "Their legal name is Masters. You'll receive the court ruling Monday to change their IDs," Doug assured me. With that, he ended the call. Overwhelmed, tears flowed, and I struggled to speak. Helen and Amanda were concerned, but I quickly composed myself. "I told them Miranda was arriving at the airport at 7:30 on Monday morning, confirming she's mine," I said. When they broke the news to Ronald Peterson, he was devastated. Adelia had him convinced she was his. "I knew it," Helen said. "Did my cousin Adelia ever tell anyone the truth?" Amanda asked. "I've got bad news. You have to change your last name back to Masters because the federal court ruled your adoption invalid." My daughter ran into my arms, crying. Peterson never felt right. We saw Amanda off as she headed back to New York to retrieve what she wanted in her car. Then we went to meet Helen's 2 brothers and their wives and Jackson. They were going to help move the furniture she wanted out of her house. Since only 2 of the bedrooms were furnished, we had plenty of space to accommodate her things. The whole story was printed in the Sunday edition of the Southeast Missouri newspaper. We met them at Hickory House for breakfast. They all noticed the happiness glowing on Helen's face. Her sisters-in-law pointed out that in 6 months with Helen's cooking, I would have some meat on my bones. The restaurant owner, a longtime friend, said, "Congrats, John. This meal's on us." We finished everything in one long day. I think Helen's sisters-in-law were jealous of her new home. Helen and I offered to take them and their families out to dinner, but they declined, suggesting they would come when we hosted our first housewarming party with all our family at home. We were at the airport at 7:15 in the morning because some days the connecting flight arrived early. Helen had informed those who needed to know that neither of us would be in today. The response was, "We figured that when we read the Sunday paper." I watched Miranda descend the stairs from the small plane, heading towards me in blue jeans and a tank top. It was hard to believe how much she had changed. The last time I saw her, she was a teenage girl with pigtails. Now, she was a striking young lady. As soon as she saw me, she started running towards me. The sliding doors opened to let her run in. She cried out loudly as she literally jumped into my arms. "Daddy!" Both of us let our emotions flow. We were being captured by cameras, but we didn't care. I heard Helen tell the local station reporter, "That's John Masters and his youngest daughter, whom half the town thought he had liquidated. Turns out they were kidnapped over 5 years ago. The FBI has their mother and her lover in jail for it right now. This is the first time they've seen each other in over 5 years." We broke apart and turned towards the reporter. Miranda stepped forward and said, "I'm Miranda Masters. That's my father, John Masters. 5 years ago, with help from my mother's family, we were kidnapped. They spread rumors that our father had physically misused us. That's not true. While my mother's extended family may be involved in such things, our dad did not and would not. Anyone coming after him in the future is coming after my sister and me. We're family, and we stand together. When our mother divorced our father, she told us he was just a man getting what he deserved. None of us deserved what she did to us. He's not just my dad, he's the most honest person I know." I introduced Miranda to Helen. Miranda hugged her and said, "Amanda and I had a long talk yesterday about everything we learned. It turns out our mother lied and misled Ronald just as much as she did our dad. In her need for attention, she nearly destroyed 5 lives. We know you and Dad were planning to get married. So as far as Amanda and I are concerned, we want to leave out the Helen part. Okay, Mom?" Helen teared up and said, "You couldn't have said it better, Miranda. I agree, if you promise to be one of my bridesmaids. Let's grab some breakfast, then we'll get you some clothes at Macy's," I suggested. "Can we go to Denny's?" Miranda asked. "Are they still open?" "Yes, but Huddle House is the closest thing to it for breakfast food," I replied. "Is that okay?" It was, and I was surprised by how much my youngest could eat. The way she ate, I thought it might be cheaper to get a room and board somewhere. I still found it hard to believe I had a life again. My 2 daughters were back in my life in a way I had never dreamed possible. It wasn't just a house I slept in anymore, it was home. While we were shopping at Macy's, I intentionally got lost and wandered away. There's just something unmanly about watching women discuss bra sizes, underwear, and personal stuff. By the time they realized I was missing, I was almost back. Helen asked, "Where did you disappear to?" "I had to use the restroom," I replied. I had to sit and watch as Miranda tried on clothes. For some reason, she wanted my opinion. Honestly, I thought she'd look good in anything. After spending $300, we left with 2 bags. Back at the house, Helen took Miranda upstairs to show her the now furnished 4 bedrooms. Helen was thrilled when Miranda chose the room with her master bedroom furniture. We were relaxing on the patio before the heat of the day set in. The ladies had iced tea, and I had a cold beer. I walked over to Helen, took the ring box out of my pocket, and got down on one knee, surprising her. "Since I haven't officially asked you," I said, opening the box with the 3-ring set, "will you marry me once my divorce is final?" "Of course," she said. "Yes." Miranda captured it all on video and sent it to Amanda with the text. "Yes, it fits." I had found out Helen's ring size from her brother. About half an hour later, Helen received an unexpected call. Both Miranda and I looked at her with concern as she unexpectedly teared up. I didn't understand until she handed me her phone. As soon as the person said, "Congrats, Dad," I realized it was my eldest daughter. "Are you on the road yet?" I asked. "I left at 4 yesterday. I've been driving almost nonstop since then," Amanda explained. "There's less traffic at night and fewer cops on the highway. My car cruises well at just over 100. Let my sister know I got her stuff." I agreed and asked, "How much farther do you have to go?" She replied, "What time is it there?" I said, "About 2 p.m. Why?" She said, "I need directions. I just pulled off onto the off-ramp at Cape." I told her I'd text her the directions. I did. I wasn't sure whether to be proud or upset, because it seemed she had driven 24 hours straight. The girls heard the car coming up the driveway and were at the door waiting before she got out. Amanda looked tired, but otherwise fine. It hit me hard seeing my 3 girls together. The first thing Amanda did was check out Helen's engagement ring. Just then, the house phone rang. I ran to answer it. "John, we've been swamped today," Chris said. "Some of the clients we lost due to the rumors are coming back, and we have a lot of new ones setting up appointments. Many are from out of state. If this continues, we'll need to hire a lot more staff." "We're working on that," I said. "My daughter Amanda starts as a junior next week. She's green, but working towards her master's in business administration." "Can I have her on my team?" Chris asked. "It will be long hours, but she'll learn the ropes the hard way." I agreed. "Okay." Chris Acker was a go-getter. I had hired him right after he graduated top of his class. Like us all, he learned the hard way, and it cost us. But over time, he more than made up for it. He quickly realized that business theory didn't hold up in the real world. He admitted it openly. Everyone working under him learned the same way. His approach was if you saw someone making a mistake, you stopped them and explained why their thinking or approach was wrong. The only wrong question was the one you didn't ask. "Chris, Helen and I will be taking the rest of the week off," I said. "We have a lot to sort out with our engagement and the girls coming home. We also have to handle some legal issues and enroll Miranda in school." "Engaged? Wow, that reminds me. We got a letter from the FB. Can you swing by and pick it up at 5? Chris said. "Hell yes. Thanks for the reminder. I had forgotten," I said before hanging up. At 4:30, the 4 of us headed into town. We decided to celebrate our first official meal as a family at Red Lobster, a place my daughters picked. I pulled up in front of our office and asked Amanda if she wanted to see where she'd be working. She said yes, so we all went in. As we entered, the receptionist stood up and led us to the biggest conference room. Inside was a large cake and a huge banner that said, "Congratulations, Amanda met her new boss." Everyone met my new family. It was noted that my daughters were already calling Helen Mom. We arrived at the restaurant around 6:30, just in time for their annual all-you-can-eat shrimp deal. My daughters lost count of how much they ate. I couldn't believe I now ate raw lemons like others eat oranges. Together, my daughters and I read the court ruling. The first point highlighted that the document used could easily be found on LegalZoom.com, requiring no lawyer. The second point noted that writing experts said John Allen Masters' signature had been traced, causing breaks in the ink flow. Comparing his signatures on the document showed inconsistent breaks, unlike the natural pattern one develops over time. The third point was that I had never signed my full middle name. The fourth giveaway was the recorded date of my signature, according to witnesses, was after they had left Missouri. The second page of the court ruling declared that Amanda and Miranda Peterson were never their legal names. They had always been Amanda Masters and Miranda Masters. All legal documents were to be updated accordingly. We spent the week resolving legal issues. First, we went to the Social Security office, then the state attorney's office to restore their birth certificates, and finally, to the motor vehicle department for new driver's licenses. Personally, I enjoyed registering Miranda in 11th grade with the same school principal who had been rude to me 5 years ago. The last task on Thursday was to get them new cell phones. On Friday, Amanda and Miranda followed Helen and me to the Ford Groves dealership in Jackson. Helen allowed me to trade in her car and Helen's for new ones. The ladies each got a brand new lease-to-own 2019 Ford Escape through my company. Once home, I wrote Amanda a check for the trade-in value applied against our down payment. My divorce lawyer called. For the first time in 5 years, my daughters and I had a court hearing at 1 p.m. on Monday. I asked Helen if she wanted to come. She said, "Absolutely." We all sat before Judge Donald McDonald watching Adelia Lynn Peterson on a large monitor. Without her usual flair, she didn't look like much. Orange was not her color. The judge asked her lawyer about the contempt charge. He said, she didn't understand she had to be in court that day. The judge asked, "Did you remind her repeatedly during the settlement process?" "Yes." "Are you so incompetent that you believe the defendant might be telling the truth?" "No." "How does your client plead?" "No contest, Your Honor." "I sentence her to 5 years to be served after any federal time," the judge said coldly. "Your Honor," her lawyer said. "Isn't that extreme?" "Not in my eyes, but she can appeal. As for the divorce, it's granted in favor of Mr. Masters. All remaining assets are his. She forfeited her rights the day she left the state with her minor daughters. He turned to my lawyer and said, "Draw up the divorce decree and include a waiver for the required number of days. Your client has waited long enough." "Your Honor, my client has one final request," my lawyer said. "What is that?" the judge asked, looking at me. "He's recently engaged to Miss Helen Beard and wonders if you would handle the civil ceremony when they marry," my lawyer said. Helen and the girls almost jumped out of their seats. I smiled. My lawyer and I had hoped it would play out like this. If it did, he was to use the funds in his trust to pay Ford Groves for the car leases, transfer ownership to Helen and the kids, and write me a check for the balance. I would be honored. Congratulations to them both. It's long overdue, the judge said with a big smile. Adelia's face on the monitor showed pure shock. She probably expected a light sentence for contempt, not this. It must have stung to learn I was marrying her younger cousin. The judge banged his gavel and said, "Court is adjourned." As we stood to leave, the judge came over to shake my hand. I introduced him to my future wife and daughters with the respect he deserved. He told them, "I'm not on the bench now, so just call me Don," before we left. He added, "We need to go fly fishing soon, John, before it gets too hot." I doubt any man has ever seen 3 more excited girls than mine. They were talking non-stop. Having been used to silence for so long, I wished for a good set of earplugs. Then I noticed a couple quietly leaving the court. It hit me hard. It was my mom and dad. As my dad said when he disowned me, "Forgiveness is easy, forgetting is not." I was learning how true that was. Nothing excites girls more than planning a wedding, and that energy filled our home. As we settled back into routine, Helen put her house up for sale. Amanda was fitting in well with my staff, impressing everyone with her sharp mind. During her first week, Miranda reconnected with old friends. Masters Consulting was overwhelmed, landing 2 new corporations needing complete restructuring to survive, along with a major cash influx. Amanda surprised us all by identifying overlooked issues costing our client millions in potential sales. It took her 3 weeks to turn it around, resulting in a surprising sales increase. One night, Helen and I were cuddling in bed. She was adjusting to becoming a mom, just as I was to being a dad again. "You know, dear, my biological clock is ticking. How long do you think we should wait before trying for 1 or 2 of our own?" Helen asked, looking at me with her dreamy eyes. I had never thought about it, but after everything she had gone through with me, I couldn't refuse. "As long as you're not showing in our wedding pictures, I'll leave that up to you," I said. I don't need to explain why neither of us got much sleep that night. We said our vows on Mother's Day. Amanda was the maid of honor, Miranda and another niece were bridesmaids. Chris Acker was my best man, and 2 nephews were ushers. It was a small affair at the back of our house with the lake as a backdrop. Helen's brothers prepared the yard. The judge married us under an arbor of spring flowers. We men wore blue jeans, cowboy hats, and matching boots, while the ladies dressed up. Helen wore a traditional white gown, and her bridesmaids wore yellow dresses. Her extended family provided a delightful barbecue spread. That night, our patio became a dance floor with live music. Life continued. Adelia and Ronald's criminal trial began, and Ronald filed for divorce. My civil lawyer was discussing the case with their lawyers and Bank of America's legal team. Our first Father's Day as a new family was approaching, and I knew my wife and daughters were planning something, but I had no idea what. On Father's Day, Helen and I were fishing on the lake at dawn. The fish were biting as soon as the flies hit the water. In less than an hour, we had our limit. Just before heading back to shore, Helen handed me a card she had hidden. I opened it to read, "Happy Father's Day. Daddy, we're pregnant, and it's a boy." I jumped in excitement and flipped the canoe. We lost everything: the fish, the fishing poles, and our tackle box. We paddled back to shore, completely soaked. When the girls found out how I learned the news, they thought it was hilarious. They already knew about Helen's pregnancy. It takes time for things to mellow, but that wasn't always true. For me, it took watching my son being born. He came into the world screaming, weighing 7 pounds. My mother was shocked when I called asking her to come to the hospital maternity ward as soon as possible. When she arrived, I rushed her into Helen's room where she was holding our son. "His name is Colin Richard," I said. My mother lost it. That had been her grandfather's name. As for my father and me, we still don't speak. He would have to come to me, and as of now, he hasn't. But each morning is a new day, and life goes on.